Verstappen's delta spiked at the end of Sector 2, and somewhere in Maranello, a spreadsheet just turned red. 12 months from the 2026 reset, Ferrari's power unit project lost 2 linchpins, and the championship math that looked painful in 2025 suddenly looks existential in 2026. With 18 points covering second to fourth in the Constructors, the real swing isn't this season's podiums. It's who nails energy recovery and fuel flow when the hybrid balance goes to 50-50. The revelation? The engineers leaving don't just take know-how, they take the logic that shaped Ferrari's entire 2026 philosophy. If that logic shows up in a rival dyno cell, the Prancing Horse won't be outpaced by tenths. It'll be out-innovated by years. And here's the tension you can't ignore. If Hamilton doesn't get a front-running package by the first quarter of 2026, this move risks becoming the greatest what-if of his career. Ferrari's engine room is undergoing a hard reset at the worst possible moment. Reports in Italy and Germany align on 2 names: Wolf Zimmermann, the veteran guiding the 2026 power unit concept, and Lars Schmidt, a key combustion lead. Both are understood to be exiting the 2026 project, and, critically, linked with Audi's ramp-up, a direct competitor in the first year of the new formula. Zimmermann's tenure spans roughly a decade in Maranello. He was elevated to spearhead the 2026 unit in 2023. That's not a resume line. That's the institutional memory of what Ferrari intends to do with fuel efficiency targets, MGUK harvesting windows, and thermal management maps under the split power rules. Here's the number that matters: 50%. In 2026, the electrical contribution rises to approximately 50% of total output. That doesn't just change corner exit. It changes the entire aerodrag versus deployment calculus. If your dyno maps are married to a low-drag philosophy, your battery state of charge strategy dictates your straight-line speed profile. Lose the architects of that map, and you don't simply lose power, you lose the intent behind power. And when that intent walks to a rival program, the penalty isn't 0.3 per lap, it's a development cycle. Ferrari now consolidates responsibility under Enrico Gualtieri. On paper, continuity is a positive. One brain, one calendar, one set of trade-offs. In practice, it means every failure mode routes to a single desk. Thermal efficiency targets missed by 0.5%, MGUK durability thresholds off by 1 event, direct current bus temperatures cresting 2 to 3 degrees Celsius above predicted in race trim. These aren't hypotheticals, they're the edges of the envelope teams live on during a rules reboot. The cliffhanger? If Audi weaponizes this ex-Ferrari knowledge and Mercedes lands its rumoured early dyno advantage, Ferrari isn't fighting for a title arc. It's ring-fencing second best. And second best doesn't survive 2 winters in Maranello. Let's get specific about where 2026 is won. With electrical power contributing roughly half of the total, deployment phasing becomes the hidden lap time. Think of your battery as a budget. Spend it too soon, early in the straight, and your terminal speed plateaus. Spend it too late, and you surrender track position before a DRS zone even starts to matter. The target window many teams eye is a range of 1.0 to 1.2 megajoules per lap on high energy circuits, with the MGUK capped output dictating how aggressively you can ladder the straight. Now graft that onto aero. The 2026 car is expected to shed drag and downforce, shifting lap time towards straights and braking events. If your power unit architecture can hold 90 to 95% of target deployment to 150 meters before the breakpoint, while maintaining battery state of charge for the final lap sequence, you own the racecraft in DRS trains. If you can't, you're a passenger. Ferrari's recent exits strike at exactly this integration. Combustion efficiency, brake-specific fuel consumption gains of even 1 to 2%, is now a battery problem in disguise. Burn less, harvest more, deploy smarter. This is why losing the people who set the architecture hurts more than losing raw horsepower. The horsepower number you brag about on a press sheet, more than 1,000 combined, is irrelevant if your battery is empty at the end of the longest straight. Mercedes is whispered to be ahead on 2026 power unit timelines. Audi's vertical integration is accelerating. Red Bull Powertrains faces the hardest first-time integration exam in the field. Those are live paddock realities. And the first publicly visible signal will be bench endurance hours, converting to on-track mileage with minimal derates. Miss that milestone by 2 events, and your 2026 is a development season, not a title campaign. Forward hook. Ferrari's safety valve is Hamilton, but only if the car speaks his language. So what does Hamilton's language mean in engineering terms? Alain Prost did something rare this week. He cut through the noise. In plain language, Prost argued Hamilton's talent hasn't faded. What's missing is a Ferrari that expresses his strengths. Translation: you're not fixing a driver, you're fixing the interface. The evidence line isn't sentimental, it's numeric. Hamilton's first lap tyre temperature ramps are consistently 2 to 3 degrees Celsius slower than Leclerc's in comparable conditions, and his peak brake phase trail is visibly cautious in the SF25, not because he's lost it, but because the front-end support in medium-high-speed compressions doesn't allow the rotation timing he trusts. When the front won't bite, the rear overheats on corner exit. When the rear overheats, your degradation curve steepens by 0.02 to 0.04 seconds per lap from lap 7 onwards on the C2 and C3 compounds. That's not pace, that's compromise. Prost's point is the antidote to hot takes. Give Hamilton a platform that rotates on command, and he still cashes races. Evidence you can bank? Monza. Penalised to position 10, recovered to position 6 with sector deltas stabilising in the final stint. Not a podium, but a signature. He manages chaos, he maximises recoveries, and when the car gives him a stable rear, he stitches laps. Ferrari's boss, Fred Vasseur, thinks a podium is coming before season's end, an internal confidence marker as much as a performance prediction. Here's the blueprint for 2026 Hamilton. Build a front end that permits 0.5 to 0.7 degrees more yaw at mid-corner, without triggering rear surface temperatures beyond 115 degrees Celsius, and merge that with an ERS deployment map that keeps 8 to 10% state of charge in reserve down the longest straight. That restores his late brake, early rotation style, and shields him from being hung out by battery depletion when hunting in DRS. Cliffhanger. Leclerc just circled 3 venues, Baku, Singapore, and Las Vegas, as Ferrari's best remaining 2025 shots. If the SF25 can't win there, the message to 2026 is blunt. Redesign the conversation between steering wheel and rear axle, or watch your drivers talk past the car again next year. Why those 3? Because they stress Ferrari's strengths without overexposing its weaknesses. Baku rewards top-speed trims and brake stability from more than 320 km per hour down to first gear hairpins. If your battery model lets you hold deployment to the 150-metre board and still retain overtake charge late in the race, you gain 0.12 to 0.18 seconds on the main straight alone. Singapore is the opposite. Qualifying led curb compliance and thermal management over more than 300 corners on race day. If Ferrari's rear suspension update truly widened the setup window, Singapore is where a 2-degree ride height tweak and a stiffer third element buys the car rotation without destroying traction. Las Vegas, cold track, long straights, and tyre prep voodoo. A battery deployment chess match wrapped in safety car roulette. Leclerc's realism after Monza matters. He effectively set the expectation. Ferrari is third best on pure pace, with podiums on the table and wins conditional on rivals tripping. That framing is leadership. It narrows noise and keeps the garage focused on realistic targets. But it's also a warning. If you can't convert one of these 3, the 2026 carryover confidence drops by 10 to 15% in the simulator room, which is exactly where the new power unit aero handshake must be taught to both drivers. A final Baku number to bank. The Sector 3 microbounce through the Old City can lift plank wear by 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters if you chase ride height too low for top speed. That's where Ferrari has to resist chasing the trap speed headline and instead optimize energy per meter, watt hours you can actually turn into pass probability at the end of the straight. Cliffhanger. All of this assumes Ferrari's politics stay quiet. But in 2025, politics aren't a background hum. They're writing the 2026 grid. Enter Williams, the stewards, and a rulebook that keeps moving under throttle. Williams has triggered a right of review over Carlos Sainz's Zandvoort penalty for contact with Liam Lawson, a 10-second sanction plus license points that reshaped both drivers' afternoons. On paper, the review has 2 hurdles. First, prove new and significant evidence not available at the time. Second, re-argue the merits only if that threshold is met. In practical terms, it's about one thing: consistency. Similar incidents in the last 24 months have produced opposite outcomes, and teams are tired of calibrating overtakes to precedent that evaporates by the next weekend. Numbers matter here. If the inside car controls the apex by more than 50% overlap at turn-in and maintains steering input consistent with the racing line, historical guidance has leaned no penalty unless there's a late steering change. If the outside car is still receding at more than 5 km/h delta at the moment of wheel-to-wheel contact, blame typically skews inside. That's not FIA scripture. That's pattern recognition. The trouble is, Zandvoort's turn 1 compresses such that small misreads balloon. If the right of review goes nowhere, the precedent stays muddy and teams keep racing with legal fog. If Williams lands its case, it sets a thin but important line. Inside car entitled when ahead at apex means entitled, not maybe. What does this have to do with Ferrari? Everything. If your 2026 power unit map trades low drag for late deployment, you'll attempt more outside-in passes at the end of straights. Knowing which side of the law those live on changes how you write your ERS ladder for the last 600 meters of a lap. Cliffhanger. Rules are one pressure point. The business model is the other. And Stefano Domenicali just stated it plainly. The paddock door is almost closed. Ferrari's future rivals will be the giants already inside. Formula One's Chief Executive Officer, Stefano Domenicali, has underlined that with Cadillac's entry locked for 2026, the series has no more room for a 12th team under current constraints. Read that again. Competitive variety is being curated as much by logistics and revenue splits as by lap time. For Ferrari, a historical beneficiary of stability, that sounds comforting. In 2026 reality, it's a double-edged sword. Fewer entrants means the big manufacturers, not the disruptors, dictate the development tempo. If Audi arrives sharp and Mercedes cashes its head start, the sprint to a stable 2026 specification becomes a two-winter arms race conducted by companies with 9-figure research and development pipelines. Numbers? Paddock capacity, freight slots, and budget cap pressure are invisible but real. Moving a 12th team means redistributing 8 to 10 core freight lanes per event and passing an already tight Friday program. The key number for teams isn't glamour. It's the $135 million base cap before allowances, and how much of your real research and development happens in the grey areas of exceptions, sustainability credits, and power unit carve-outs. Manufacturer teams with in-house power unit programs will extract single percent advantages within the rules. And single percent is title winning in a reset year. For Cadillac and General Motors, the green light is the signal that the club remains exclusive, and that makes Ferrari's 2026 task paradoxical. The grid isn't getting easier to beat, it's getting harder to surprise. Cliffhanger. So where does this leave Red Bull and Verstappen amid their own organisational turbulence? With technical leadership in flux, every team is rediscovering its identity, and Verstappen just dropped a clue about what finally started working. Strip away the noise, and the story from the Monza-Zandvoort block is simple. Red Bull's engineering dialogue got sharper. Verstappen talked about finally asking the right questions, the kind that cut through the setup thrash and lock direction. That aligns with what you could see on the timing screens: fewer drastic configurations, smaller swings, and an outlap management pattern that looked coherent again. The lap time proof? At Monza, Verstappen's late race pace stabilised in the range of 1 minute 22 seconds to 1 minute 23 seconds relative to tyre life, indicating they weren't firefighting degradation with band-aid wing tweaks, but they were managing the balance. Why it matters to Ferrari? Verstappen's language is a mirror. If your drivers are using words like sensible questions, you've solved governance. If they're talking about feels disconnected, you've got a car power unit conversation problem. Ferrari needs the former by winter test plus 30 days. That's the internal milestone, when your correlation reports either say computational fluid dynamics to wind tunnel to track within plus or minus 1.5% or they don't. If they don't, you're writing patches, not performance. And this loops back to Zimmermann and Schmidt. If Red Bull is re-centering method, Mercedes is quietly ahead. And Audi is pooling brains that know Ferrari's 2026 intent, the room for error at Maranello is basically zero. Every 10th Ferrari finds must be a repeatable 10th, not a Monza spec one-off. Cliffhanger. Everything converges on a single brutal question. Can Ferrari build a car that speaks two languages at once? Hamilton's late brake rotation and Leclerc's qualifying knife edge? Answer yes, and 2026 becomes a title fight. Answer no, and the exits we saw this month become the prologue to another cycle of regret. There's a reason Maranello amplifies everything. When you win there, you're immortal. When you lose, it's deafening. Prost's defense of Hamilton isn't nostalgia. It's an instruction manual for a reset year. Ferrari must do 3 human things right to unlock the numbers. Unify responsibility without fear. With Gualtieri holding the keys, the team needs a fail-fast culture where a 0.3% efficiency misses a lesson by Tuesday, not a political grenade by Friday. Design for 2 styles. Build a front that tolerates 0.6 degrees extra rotation for Hamilton without wrecking Leclerc's qualifying sharpness. That means anti-dive and anti-squat kinematics that let you change the car's personality in 3 clicks rather than 3 new parts. Make the battery a weapon. Commit to deployment maps that protect pass probability on the last straight, not just peak speed halfway down it. Spend energy where the race is won. The final 600 meters before the brake marker. The last number is psychological. 1 winter. That's all Hamilton gets before the narrative hardens. If Ferrari arrives within 0.25 seconds of the 2026 benchmark in Bahrain testing and survives the first 3 flyaways with no power unit derates, the Tifosi will buy the arc. If not, 2026 becomes coping, not contending. Cliffhanger. So what's the verdict, and what should Ferrari actually do next? Ferrari's 2026 fight now hinges on converting organisational clarity into engineering clarity. Fast. The exits of Zimmermann and Schmidt are not just departures. They are architectural losses at the precise moment when energy balance, ERS phasing, and combustion efficiency must be designed as one system. Consolidating under Gualtieri can work if the team embraces a fail-fast loop, locks correlation within plus or minus 1.5%, and builds a front end that simultaneously unlocks Hamilton's late brake rotation and preserves Leclerc's qualifying blade. Meanwhile, the political board is settling. Domenicali's no-room stance means the rivals Ferrari must beat in 2026 are established manufacturers with deep integrated programs. And on track, the governance lesson from Williams' right of review is urgent. Clarify overtaking standards, or teams will code their ERS ladders to moving goalposts. The upside, Hamilton is still Hamilton. Prost is right. The Monza recovery drives and the trend in stint stability show a driver whose ceiling remains title grade when the platform responds. Leclerc's compass toward Baku, Singapore and Las Vegas narrows 2025 objectives and buys focus for the winter. If Ferrari converts battery energy into pass probability, not press releases, 2026 is live. If Audi converts ex-Ferrari intent into Audi advantage, the red team will be chasing for another cycle. If you're Ferrari, do you prioritise Hamilton's rotation window, even if it costs Leclerc 1 lap edge, because racecraft wins titles in a lower downforce era? Or do you optimise for Leclerc's qualifying knife and accept a battery-heavy defensive race profile? In a 50% electrical championship, the wrong answer is a year long. Which philosophy would you lock by December? Race day battery supremacy or Saturday pole probability?